Hi, everyone, and welcome to Parmjit Speaks. And today's episode is self-awareness. So self-awareness in project management. And I have an incredible guest on the show today. So today's guest speaker is Ford Hook. And so I'll share a little bit about Ford Hook, and then I'm going to pass it over to him so he could introduce himself. So Ford is from Austin, Texas, actually, and he is an IT project manager currently working with Centra Health. And again, I don't want to go too much into it. I really want to give Ford an opportunity to introduce himself because I think I can't do justice to Ford the way I think that he would be able to present himself. And that's a whole lot of words to say. Here is Ford. So Ford, take it away. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you for that. So I am from Austin, Texas, born and raised, one of the very few that can actually say that. Um, so I've been a project manager about coming on a decade now, and I've been in the audio video industry or AV integration more or less, not doing any of the creative side, and then moved over into the IT sector within the last 4 years. So I've done managed projects anywhere from a small Burger King up to high-rise buildings in downtown Austin. So I've seen a lot in the integration world, and I've slowly shifted to a little bit more software-based projects, but I do keep that background of hardware integrations into construction environments um, pretty close to home. I do that on a daily basis.
Terrific. So
But thank you for that.
yeah, no, of course. And I meant every word I said. So, so with Central Health, so you work with Central Health, but then you mentioned that you've done some construction projects, with Burger King and the high rises.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
is that with Central Health or is that just what you've done in the past?
That's in the past. Getting to where I'm at now took a lot of. Ultimately, you need a lot of experience to get where I'm at now, um, because the construction world is incredibly complicated. You run into
I'm sure.
um, challenges on every single project, and ultimately, you just kind of got to know the tricks of the trade. Yeah, it started with smaller, quick service restaurants, working your way up to high rise buildings, which is its own challenge.
Yeah.
And now I mainly deal with like clinics, healthcare environments, do administration buildings here and there, but mainly working in, pretty secure environments, healthcare environments.
Oh,
So
sure, absolutely, because there's a lot of
yeah.
regulation that you have to be mindful of course. So was it
Mhm.
hard for you then, Ford? So to make that jump, and we'll get into self-awareness in a second, but was it hard for
Yeah.
you to make that jump from construction to healthcare? Because I know they are two very different industries.
Well, I somewhat. So I still do the bread and butter of integration with construction environments, but really it was understanding uh, the layers of your stakeholders become that much more complicated in this
Yeah.
environment. So not only am I dealing with my internal IT stakeholders, but the nuances of uh, what we consider our clients, which are our ultimately our counterparts. Just understanding how the business works. So previously, the business was integration into construction environments. So it was you really you had your client who hired you, and then your internal teams. But in this environment, it's much more than the person who hired you. There's a lot of different departments that you need to navigate, a lot more red tape, and with Central Health, there's an added um, kind of wrinkle to it all. We are actually a government-led entity through the Travis County. Travis County is the county which Austin resides in,
Okay.
and so being a part of the county, there's a lot more challenges that we have to navigate through. So it took, I say, with any new job, it takes you about a year to get your feet. But given the experience I'd had in the past, it still
Mhm.
took about the construction side of it, I was able to kind of hit the ground running. I
Yeah.
had done that long enough, but getting an understanding of how the enterprise that I worked for worked, that took about a year. So.
Sure, absolutely. And so I do want to ask you a little bit about, the difference in the personalities of maybe the stakeholders in the construction realm versus the healthcare realm, or what you felt. But I also want to talk about self-awareness and
Mhm.
how you had to, I guess, kind of reflect on, well, what do you, I'm trying to figure out the right question to ask. So how to be self-aware as you're treading on a new path in a new environment that you maybe aren't as familiar with. I do want to ask you about
Mhm.
that, but before we get into that, I want to kind of let the audience know how you and I met, because I think I love the story of how we met. I think we just talked about it, right? So for
Yeah.
folks that are listening, so you and I met at PMI at the Global Summit in my gosh, in Atlanta. We met
Yep.
at that conference. And so folks that are listening, so it was so interesting the way Ford and I met. So Ford and I met on the very first day because he was carrying a cup of coffee and I
Within the
needed,
first hour, like
right.
within it had just started. Yeah.
Yeah, it had just started. And you were carrying, I will never forget this, you were carrying a cup of coffee. And I remember I needed coffee. I mean, I guess I have to have my cup of coffee in the morning. And I remember I asked you,
Mhm.
hey, where did you get that cup of coffee? And you told me Starbucks, and you told me where to find the Starbucks. But the
Yeah.
crazy thing is, so the conference had, I mean, what, thousands of attendees, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. Yet Ford and I kept running into each other in the weirdest way. And so then I'm at this German restaurant having a meal with some friends from different Europe chapters, and there was Ford. And then I'm at one of the restaurant bars having a drink by myself, I believe, and then there was Ford. And so we just kept running into each other.
Yeah, that was I think the tail end of it. I had actually I had met a friend and we went to the basketball game that night, and we that final night, and we decided to leave early because I am a huge Texas Rangers fan, and it was game one of the World Series, and so we left to go just to chat and watch the game, and you walk, and it was like, really, again, but for the fifth time throughout
Yeah.
the conference. So and that was when we really, broke the bread. You sat down and we had a great conversation. And
Yeah.
I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he came and added another flavor to the conversation. And then we ended up talking for hours, and it was a memorable moment. Definitely, that was an experience. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it was such a pleasure meeting you, and always great connecting with not just good people, but uh, for me, always a pleasure connecting with others that are in the industry, that project management, who I could uh, have a conversation with, who again, who know the industry and know some of the trials and tribulations that we go
Mhm.
through as PM. So then
Yeah.
going back to the
We got
self-awareness.
into a really heated, not you and I, but with the other gentleman, we got into a heated conversation that evening too. And we teamed up. We were like, we see eye to eye here. I think we're on the same page.
We
So
have
I completely concur.
We
Like
have the
it was
project
a
management
pleasure.
camaraderie.
Exactly. Exactly.
Kindred spirits. So then going, okay, I'm assuming the personalities of stakeholders, is there a difference? Did you find that there was a difference in the personality of stakeholders in construction versus in healthcare? And then what level of self-awareness did you need, and what uh, different techniques did you implement to really understand, okay, things about yourself and maybe how you approach things in the healthcare industry versus what you would have done in construction?
I'd say yes and no. With any kind of new stakeholder, I think you're always going to have walls that you have got to um, navigate, whether through or you got to break them down. It just depends on who that other person is. And so in the construction environment, when I was dealing with as an integrator, really it was an understanding of I was receiving information, and then it was like the perception of what does that really mean? Am I getting the full picture here? And you really got to understand all the personality, because you might only deal with that person on one project, and then you move on to the next project. It's very rare that you run into the same people, depending on the project, and so or the types of projects you are. So it's really understanding like what the hidden meaning is behind some of the information that you receive, and navigating through that, and then relaying that to the client. I think there's a lot more on that side because you are in a kind of a contractor realm. Transparency is with the client is a lot more. It's more urgent, necessary, constant communication on anything that you run into. Otherwise, things can flip very quickly, because ultimately you are a contractor, you're a subcontractor or whatever. So working with those types of stakeholders is very delicate. And now switching over into the role I'm in now, still just as delicate. But I think my personality, because you do run into the same stakeholders on a regular basis, and coming from where I've come from, working with this kind of construction background, when I deal with those types of projects, I'm able to decipher that information and then relay it to stakeholders internally, and provide them better context, because there's a lot of jargon. I mean, as a project manager, we run into it a lot. But in the healthcare environment, there's even more jargon. So
don't I know
being
it?
able to right. And so being able to decipher all of that and put it into terms where everyone can understand is extremely valuable, and it's comforting too. And that's ultimately what I strive to be able to do, is comfort stakeholders. Even if there is an issue, I like to get on the phone. I don't want to do it over text or email. I'm going to call you first and then follow up with an email. That way we can have that heart to heart talk. And you hear my voice, and you can even hear me empathize, because I don't want to deliver bad news. No one likes that. But I can show that I care. I'm invested in what I'm doing as a project manager, and I'm invested in whatever I'm trying to deliver to you. So
sure, absolutely. And couldn't agree more. And so then also switching industries, and so dealing with those different stakeholders and the different jargon and the different acronyms within the healthcare industry, and just in general. So what self-awareness or what kind of introspection needed to take place for you to really do you feel that you needed to do in order to really succeed in your role?
So, and I still take this every day. I think about this every day. I don't know everything. And that's what I went into. And when I did switch industries, I was ultimately searching for that one entity that was looking for somebody that wanted to learn, that was going to take a chance on me. And so going into that, I knew that I was going to be the new person, not only the new person, but new just to the environment. I wasn't going to know. I had my expertise and what I knew I could deliver, but I've got to curtail that to who my stakeholders and my clients and my internal teams, and make sure that I can provide that same customer service that I was able to do previously, and put everyone at ease. And so there weren't needs to be escalated. They felt comfortable with talking to me and speaking with me in an uncomfortable way, because ultimately that's where we live as project managers, is in a state of uncomfortability. And so being comfortable with what's uncomfortable is what I consider our daily lives to a degree. So
yeah, absolutely. And so also then did you at any point, as again in both your roles or throughout your career, have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome? So
imposter syndrome.
yeah.
Explain.
Okay, so imposter syndrome is, and I'm probably not going to do this term justice either. Imposter
Okay.
syndrome is when you are in a role. So let's say as a project manager, right? You have been hired by a company to maybe manage this large software integration. And you know you're experienced, you know you have the project management training, you know you work in different industries and with different clients, you know you have, again, the expertise to execute, to successfully execute on this project. Do you have you ever felt in any of these industries that, you know what, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am? Or uh, have you done a lot of comparison between yourself and other project managers? And you may not have, you may not have ever experienced this, but I'm curious to know.
Um, Not necessarily. Have I ever walked into a situation where I didn't know exactly what I was doing? Absolutely. But I never felt like I shouldn't be there.
Okay.
It was because I feel like that's why your project team's there.
Yeah.
I depend on their expertise. I need their feedback. I need them to say, "Hey, hold the phone. We can't do this," and
Yeah.
then I need you to provide why. And so I haven't run into that yet, but I also kind of have a firm grasp on my own limitations. I've definitely there are things out there that nope, that is either I don't want to do that or that is beyond my own abilities. And so, but I haven't actually run into that. Early on with where I'm at now, I ran into a few issues where I just had no idea. And so, what I stressed upon the team when I ran into those issues afterwards, so, hey, this happened.
Yeah.
Completely understand. I'll take the fall. That is my fault 100%. I never want the project team to feel like they're being attacked or um, somebody's pointing the finger at them. So
Yeah.
happy to do that. But I do in the future, don't feel like you can't have a conversation with me, um, because I'll go to bat for you.
Yeah.
And I want you to feel comfortable with me as the tip of the spear for whatever project initiative that we're working on, to go have those uncomfortable conversations. But I'm going to have a lot of questions on why. That way,
Yeah.
I can, justify those reasons or whatever it may be. And so ultimately, that's what I typically do when I go in with my project teams. And so, and I feel like the number one kind of gripe that I run into is just, oh, my time's being wasted. I don't want anyone to ever feel that way.
Yeah.
I want to be efficient with everyone's time. Sometimes, I'll block out meetings with the idea of we're going to have a short meeting and then y'all can use this time to work afterwards or things like that. Do little things for the team because I know that they work very hard, and their time is valuable. So keeping things efficient and just concise is a
Yeah.
goal of mine, and that builds the trust and that
Sure.
then they're feeling more open with me, and we can navigate those uncertainties together because ultimately it's about the team as a whole. And so I'm not sure I answered your question there about imposter syndrome, but that is how I tackle those. How I at least initiate the beginnings of those uncomfortable unknowns. That way, the next project or years from now, we have that trust. We know how to be a cohesive unit, and
Yeah.
we know we have each other's back.
Yeah,
So,
no, I love that. And I do think that you answered that. And I honestly think the fact that maybe you haven't experienced imposter syndrome is because you are a confident leader. And uh something that I'm confident, but I think I've definitely experienced imposter syndrome, but that's great. And I think a lot of that also goes back to your level of self-awareness. And I think maybe that's why that's not something you've run into. And I'm also sure, so your project team members, and I'm sure one of the reasons that you do have trust with your team members is because, like you just said, right? You don't want them to worry about finger pointing, and you're not afraid to fall on your sword. And so I'm sure that a lot of the folks that you work with have an immense appreciation for that.
I would hope so. Maybe they don't recognize it. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's got to be somebody out there that is, nah, he never did that for me. But most likely we didn't work together long enough. Maybe you
Yeah.
caught me on a bad day. But that is what I do strive for. And if anyone out there is listening, they feel that way, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn telling me, how you truly feel, and then we can have a conversation. Because ultimately, I love having conversations. I'm extremely extroverted. I can talk for days, and I love, you know, uh, building bridges, tearing down walls. I enjoy that in my daily life. So, um, yeah, I appreciate those kind words. I'm not confident in everything in my life, but I am. My skill set, and I feel like in project management is um, it brings out my personality. So
Sure,
that's kind
sure.
of why I gravitated this way. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for sharing and responding to that. And so for folks that aren't, I mean, we all know what self-awareness is, but for folks that
mhm.
don't know how to really do that introspection, what are some things that you think, like, if you were to run a workshop, let's say, on self-awareness, what are some techniques what are some techniques uh that you think folks should employ? What are some suggestions that you would have for individuals as to be, again, self-aware and to have that introspection and really look within themselves to really understand themselves and again, I'm not wording it correctly, but what techniques, traits, et cetera, what advice would you give to folks?
So it certainly was a journey for me. I had a lot of um, realities hit me later in life that made me kind of take a step back and slow down. And I think
Yeah.
the the biggest thing I could say is you're not always right. Yeah, I want to be
What?
right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But taking that step back and asking questions about yourself, why,
Yeah.
and challenging yourself. Why, you have a fear. A big fear of mine was heights. Still am. I still hate heights. I've gotten more comfortable like on planes, but if I look over the edge of a building or down a stairwell, I still get that feeling. But I got into climbing a few years ago, and it tremendously um, helped in my journey of being able to slow down and think about this path um, that I'm scaling and only focus on that, and being able to navigate through that was one part of the puzzle. It was a challenge, and so I got more comfortable with it, and now it's been a little while as of late, but I don't have a problem with scaling the side of a wall. You can go 20, 40 feet up and feeling completely safe. Being one with nature and going outside and things like that. And I think connection really kind of built that awareness. But I think the biggest key of it all was challenging my own thoughts, my own thought patterns,
Your own belief
what
system,
I
yeah.
thought exactly, and having external people as well to facilitate those conversations of just like, why are you doing it that way? Well, I don't know. This is just what I've learned, and I felt like this is what's always been right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how um, I went about my journey. I think everyone has a different catalyst,
Sure.
and I think at the end of the day, you have to want it. You have to see, hey, there is a path in life um, that is different than the one I'm on. How am I going to go about to go down that path?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so ultimately, I guess maybe it's curiosity of what other things there are in life, and self-awareness is, part of that. Just being in tune with what your own limitations are, what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and then building that life around that. So, how about
Yeah.
yourself? Let's put you on the hot spot here.
Oh no. So firstly, I love that's great feedback and a great point. So I guess for me, a lot of it is, so you said, understanding that we are not all perfect, right? So I am a self-proclaimed perfectionist, and so
Mhm,
it has taken a while for me, and through conversations, with my peers and friends, and learning from also leaders, really understanding that it's okay not to be perfect, that you're going to sometimes fall short, and really challenging my own belief system, understanding what are my triggers, right? And
mhm,
understanding, okay, what triggers me, and then how should I really be responding to that trigger? I'll give you a perfect example, without mentioning, so I was a contractor, and I was working for a government agency, and I had a colleague, and I were on site at this agency. And anyway, this individual asked me to do something which I know was assigned to them. Now, normally I would have no problem doing it. I would have a conversation about, sure, let me take on this task. But I had an issue with taking on that task, because I know this individual had a tendency to not do their work and always hand off things that were assigned to them. And
mhm,
so I basically said, but this was assigned to you. Is there a reason why, you need me to work on it? And this individual started, their voice got higher and higher, and to the point where they were kind of shouting.
mhm,
I responded and I said, we are at the client side. Firstly, I lowered my voice and I said, we are at the client side. This is not no okay conversation to firstly discuss out in the open, and especially not while we're at the client side. And
mhm,
so I said, if you want to have this conversation, let's grab a meeting room and go into that meeting room. But I noticed that during that conversation, my voice was getting a little bit higher, because I was just really frustrated with this individual who I'd had issues with in the past.
mhm,
And so when I looked back at that, in that moment, I thought I was right. And I thought, I did the right thing. But when I looked back, I think that there were different ways maybe I could have approached it, and realized that, what, maybe this individual had a bad day. Uh, maybe this individual are just going through things at home. Maybe there's a reason this individual is responding to me this way. Maybe it's the way this individual grew up. Maybe they grew up in which it was okay to maybe speak to a colleague that way. And so
mhm,
for me, it's really understanding, okay, well, what are the things that trigger me? I know it triggers me when someone is raising their voice at me, especially because I don't raise my voice at people. I believe you speak to people the way you want to be spoken to. You treat
mhm,
people the way you want to be treated. So I realize that that's a trigger for me, but for me, I recognize that I need to really figure out how I should be responding to people, and maybe lead with empathy and compassion, rather than being reactive and being quick to, get defensive. But thank you for, I wasn't planning on answering that question, but thank you for asking it.
Right, conflict is a tough one to navigate. It's been a while since, and I used to, be a part of some high conflict environments, and I've been through it. Um, I'd say I'd maybe not professionally have been through that in the last year or so, but definitely have navigated through that. And conflict is, how do you respond? And I've actually practiced techniques of navigating through conflict. And really, the first one is diffuse. Okay, I'm going to try and And if that doesn't work, then it's kind
Mhm.
of, personally, I'll shut down. I just say, yes, okay, all right, just to get that person or that other, whatever it may be, just to end this and then revisit that at another time. Because if you're at that, once you hit those like kind of like thresholds,
Yeah.
nothing constructive is going to happen
Yeah.
at all. You're not going to be able to reach that person, and likewise, they're not reaching you because you've shut down. And so, but how do you, like the natural tendency as a human being is to fight fire with fire. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back with you at that same intensity, and that in itself is a skill. It's uh, navigating through that. Yeah, difficult. Definitely a trigger. I have one of mine as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, absolutely, absolutely. And so before we wrap up, and I know we just have a few minutes, I kind of
Mm.
want the audience to get to know you, the person. So outside of work, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who is Ford? Who is Ford outside
Ooh.
of not just Ford the PM? Who is Ford the person?
Yeah. So, one of the big things that I love to do is volunteer. I donate blood regularly. I volunteer at my son's school. I have a 9-year-old. You probably can see some of his things in the back here. But I really enjoy giving back to the school that he goes to. And it's not necessarily for him, it's for just the connection with the community.
Yeah,
I love building community, and just making connections with people. And that part of that is, being there helps the direct community, and showing him what things should look like and how you build that. And so I'm also a big supporter of our local soccer team, Austin FC. I'm in what's called La Murga de Austin. I play the trumpet. I got into that the beginning of the last year in
uh-huh,
what's called the bandera section, where we were the flag waving. We built the flags, we maintain them, we keep them up for the full 90 minutes. But through that, found, and this is part of me taking down my own barriers.
yeah,
I grew up playing the trumpet and stepped away from that at the end of high school due to the intensity, and ultimately killed the joy of what music should be. And so I had found that again through La Merga de Austin and started playing again, and really, really enjoyed it. And it didn't matter. You were just doing it for the love of music and the love of the team. And so, and that through that built another kind of community, and that's sort of citywide, on a national scale, even met a lot of cool people across the United States. And so, doing that as well, and also volunteering through that community, and through just all these just different entities giving back through. We've even kind of hit an international scale as well with some of the things that I'm involved with, and so it's really cool to be a part of, and just to show my young son along the way. And then I love the outdoors. I've made a few comments about the outdoors.
yeah.
I go hiking regularly. I have ride bikes. I even longboard a little bit here
What's
here and
long?
there.
What's longboarding?
Longboard is just like a skateboard, but it's long.
Okay.
It's now that I'm almost 40, I'm like, I can't do any just kick flips, but maybe I will. But for now, I'm just gonna ride everywhere and cruise. But I love to climb as well. I'm planning to get back into that, and
Yeah.
ultimately, it's like I said, I like the outdoors. I love to camp. I try and camp once a year. A couple of years ago, I went on like a solo trip to Big Bend National Park that's here in Texas. It's
Mhm.
that kind of the bottom of that western Texas, right on the border of Mexico. Did a solo trip out there, but try and get outdoors and camp at least once a year. If I don't, then my soul is sad. But I love the outdoors. I really do, and so that's just a kind of a high level. Love music as well. Austin's the live music city, capital of the world. I like I said, I played trumpet, but I used to go and try to here and there, go hear live music, thrash about, not like I used to, but everything from Austin, Texas blues to ska music. I'll admit I like some horns in my music. So that's, I think, me in a
Yeah,
nutshell there.
I,
So
I love that. So thank you for sharing. Always great to get to know you a little bit more. I love Austin. So I've been to Austin a few times now, and it is one of my favorite cities to visit. So yeah, I definitely love the live music. You can't see it here in the background, but I actually have a guitar case and a guitar here and some drumsticks. So uh guitar didn't work out well for me because you have to cut your nails if you if you want to play guitar. And I didn't want to cut my
yeah,
nails, but love the drums. I love playing the drums. So yeah. Awesome. Well,
yeah,
so firstly, thank you again for being on this podcast. And I think this is a great conversation. And just want to go back to, what I said. I meant every word I said. Just based on you sharing some of the things that you do in the community and some of the volunteer work that you do. I think this just goes back to what I said earlier when I introduced you. Not only are you an excellent project manager, but you are just a good human being. And so such a pleasure to have had you on today. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. And everyone, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you have more episode ideas of things that you would like to hear, again, this podcast focuses on project management. It focuses on communication, or let me go back, focuses on CPR, the acronym CPR, not CPR, what you would think, CPR meaning communication, project management, and resilience. So if you have any ideas for future episodes, please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, Ford, thank you so very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.